Do you know how many marriages look perfect from the outside, but are completely dead on the inside? Where two people share a home, a bed, maybe even children, but the feelings that once connected them have been slowly suffocated by patterns neither of them fully understands? Most people think feelings die from dramatic betrayals, affairs, lies, abandonment. But the truth is far more insidious. Feelings in marriage often die from 1,000 small cuts, from behaviors that seem minor in isolation but accumulate into something fatal, from dynamics that erode respect, security, and appreciation until nothing remains but resentment and emotional distance. And here's what makes this so tragic. Most of these marriage-killing patterns are completely preventable. They're not mysteries. They're predictable consequences of specific behaviors that destroy the foundation feelings need to survive. But by the time most couples recognize what's happening, the damage is already done. The feelings are already dead, and resurrecting them feels impossible. The first killer, and one of the most corrosive, is when a wife becomes consumed by materialism and fixates on her husband's money as the measure of his worth. Not reasonable financial partnership, not shared decision-making about resources, but the toxic dynamic where she views his income as something she's entitled to control and spend without regard for partnership or mutual respect, where every dollar becomes a battleground, where she compares what he provides to what other women's husbands give them and feels perpetually shortchanged, where she sees his financial success not as something they built together, but as resources she deserves simply for being his wife. This struggle over resources creates a fundamental shift in how he perceives her. She stops being his partner and becomes someone who views him as an ATM to extract from. Research from the Journal of Marriage and Family shows that couples where one partner exhibits entitled attitudes towards shared finances report significantly higher conflict and lower satisfaction. Why? Because money isn't just about money. It's about respect, partnership, and whether you view your spouse as a teammate or as a means to an end. When a man feels like his wife is more interested in what he provides than who he is, when he senses that her affection hinges on his financial generosity, when she compares his contributions to other men and finds him lacking, something inside him dies. He stops wanting to provide for her because provision stops feeling like care and starts feeling like obligation or manipulation. He becomes resentful, closed off, protective of his resources because he no longer trusts that she values him beyond what he can give. And she interprets his caution as selfishness, as proof he doesn't care enough, which drives her to demand more, which makes him withdraw further. The cycle destroys intimacy because genuine feelings cannot coexist with transactional thinking. You cannot maintain feelings for someone you view primarily as a financial resource, and you cannot feel valued by someone who seems to care more about your wallet than your heart. The second killer is the poison of constant comparison, when a wife measures her husband against other men and always finds him lacking. Why can't you be more like Sarah's husband who takes her on vacations? Rachel's husband bought her a new car. What have you done for me? Michael's so romantic with Emma. Why don't you ever plan surprises? This social comparison, holding your partner up against an imagined standard of other people's relationships, is soul-crushing. Every comparison sends the message, you are not enough. Other men are better. I settled for you. And here's what men need to understand. When a woman constantly compares you to others, it's often not because those men are actually better. It's because she's fundamentally dissatisfied with her own life and using you as the scapegoat. But what women need to understand is that constant comparison doesn't motivate improvement. It kills a man's desire to try. Because why would he invest energy into pleasing someone who has made it clear he'll never measure up? Why would he put in effort for someone who views everything he does as inadequate compared to some idealized version of another woman's marriage?
The third killer, a husband's stinginess that threatens his wife's sense of emotional security. This is different from being financially responsible or cautious. Stinginess is when a man has resources but withholds them in ways that communicate contempt or control. When he can afford to make life easier for his family, but chooses not to out of some misguided sense of frugality or power. When his wife needs something reasonable, not luxury, but basic dignity, and he makes her beg for it, justify it, feel guilty for needing it. When he spends freely on himself, but questions every penny she requires. This creates a particular kind of psychological damage because it sends the message, you are not worth investing in. Your needs don't matter. Your comfort is not my concern. And a woman who feels her husband views her as an expense to minimize rather than a partner to cherish, she cannot maintain feelings for him. Her feelings don't die from lack of luxury. They die from the lack of generosity, the absence of care, the realization that the man who should want to provide for her comfort actually resents doing so. The fourth killer is when a husband fails to carry his weight, when he's irresponsible about his role in the partnership. Not occasional mistakes or temporary struggles, but the chronic pattern where she's managing everything while he coasts. Where she's working, raising children, maintaining the home, planning their lives, and he's contributing the bare minimum. Where he acts more like another child she has to manage than a partner carrying half the load. This role imbalance doesn't just create resentment about tasks, it destroys her feelings for him. Because a woman cannot maintain romantic feelings for a man she has to mother. She cannot desire someone she has to nag, remind, and manage like a child. Her nervous system shifts from viewing him as a partner to viewing him as a dependent. And once that shift happens, the emotional connection between them dies. Research shows that when domestic and emotional labor is severely imbalanced, women report not just dissatisfaction, but an actual loss of attraction to their partners. It's not conscious, it's biological. You cannot want someone you're mothering. The fifth killer, and this one affects both partners, is when one person feels chronically unappreciated. When everything they do is taken for granted, when their efforts go unnoticed, when their sacrifices are expected rather than acknowledged. Think about the husband who works long hours to provide, while his wife complains he's never home, but never acknowledges the sacrifice he's making. Or the wife who manages everything domestically while her husband benefits from her labor but treats it as invisible, as if dinner appears on the table and clean clothes materialize in drawers by magic. This lack of appreciation creates a specific kind of death, the death of motivation. Why continue giving when your giving isn't even seen? Why keep sacrificing when sacrifice is treated as obligation rather than gift? The unappreciated partner slowly stops trying, not out of spite, but out of exhaustion, out of the soul-crushing realization that their efforts make no difference in how they're valued. And once both partners stop trying because both feel unappreciated, the marriage becomes a wasteland of mutual resentment and emotional abandonment. The sixth killer is the gap in education or social class between partners. Not the gap itself, but the way it's weaponized in the relationship. When one partner uses their higher education or social status as proof of superiority. When the more educated spouse dismisses the other's opinions as ignorant or unsophisticated. When the spouse from a better family treats their partner like they're lucky to have married up. When intellectual or class differences become a power dynamic rather than just a difference. This creates a particular poison because it attacks the core of someone's dignity. The lesser partner begins to feel perpetually inadequate, like they'll never be smart enough, refined enough, good enough. And the superior partner? They begin to feel contempt for someone they view as beneath them. Feelings cannot survive contempt. They cannot survive the constant reminder that one person believes they settled. They cannot survive the erosion of mutual respect that happens when education or background becomes a weapon rather than just a fact.
The seventh and final killer, using jealousy as a weapon of emotional pressure and control.
This is when one partner deliberately tries to make the other jealous to manipulate their behavior, extract attention, or punish them. Mentioning how attractive someone else is, talking about an ex in ways designed to create insecurity, flirting with others to test their partner's reaction, creating situations where the partner feels threatened not because there's actual infidelity, but because jealousy is being used as a tool. This is profoundly destructive because it replaces security with anxiety. A relationship built on jealousy isn't built on genuine connection, it's built on fear. The person being manipulated through jealousy doesn't feel more connected, they feel more insecure, more anxious, more controlled. And eventually, they either become possessive and paranoid themselves, or they emotionally detach as a form of self-protection. Because living in constant fear that your partner might leave or cheat or find someone better, that's not intimacy, that's torture. Consider the story of Rachel and Tom, married for 8 years. Rachel came from a wealthier background and had a master's degree, while Tom had finished high school and worked in construction. For the first few years, the difference didn't matter. But slowly, insidiously, it became the weapon Rachel used whenever she felt frustrated. "You wouldn't understand. You didn't go to university. My father warned me about marrying beneath my class." In arguments, she'd compare him to her colleagues, educated, sophisticated, earning more. Tom started working longer hours, not just for money, but to avoid being home. He stopped sharing his thoughts because she'd dismissed them as unsophisticated. He stopped trying to please her because nothing he did measured up to her standards. Meanwhile, Rachel felt increasingly disconnected, but blamed Tom for not being enough, not understanding that she'd systematically destroyed his confidence and desire to connect with her. By the time they entered therapy, Tom was emotionally gone. He said something devastating. "I used to have real feelings for her, but you can't maintain feelings for someone who makes you feel worthless, and I can't respect someone who needs to make me feel small to feel big." Now here's what connects all 7 of these killers: the fixation on money, the constant comparison, the stinginess, the irresponsibility, the lack of appreciation, the weaponized class gap, and the manipulative jealousy. They all communicate the same fundamental message: you are not valued, you are not respected, you are not safe with me. And once that message is received, once a person realizes their partner doesn't actually honor them as an equal, worthy human being, feelings die. Not slowly, not gradually, they just stop. The heart that once opened closes. The desire that once flowed stops. The respect that once existed evaporates. And what remains are 2 people going through the motions of marriage while being completely alone. Here's the brutal truth most couples don't want to face. By the time you recognize these patterns have killed your feelings, it's often too late to resurrect them. Because feelings don't die and then come back. They die and leave scar tissue. They die and create protective walls. They die and are replaced by something harder: indifference, contempt, resignation. You can't force someone back into feeling what they once felt. You can't apologize away years of making them feel worthless. You can't suddenly start appreciating someone after they've internalized that their value to you is conditional or non-existent. The time to address these patterns is before they kill the feelings. The time to change is when you first notice yourself comparing, withholding, demanding, dismissing, controlling. Because once the feelings are dead, you're not trying to heal a relationship, you're trying to resurrect one. And resurrection requires a miracle most marriages never receive. So what actually prevents this death? What keeps feelings alive even through difficulty? Mutual respect, genuine appreciation, seeing your partner as a complete human being worthy of dignity rather than as a function to fulfill your needs or a competitor in some imagined hierarchy.
recognizing that the person you married isn't there to complete you, impress your family, or measure up to everyone else's partners. They're there to partner with you. And partnership requires viewing each other as equals, even in your differences. It requires generosity rather than scorekeeping. It requires gratitude rather than entitlement. It requires security rather than manipulation. When both people commit to honoring each other's dignity, when both refuse to use their differences as weapons, when both practice appreciation rather than criticism, feelings don't just survive, they deepen. But when even one partner engages in these marriage-killing patterns consistently, when money becomes a weapon, comparison becomes constant, stinginess replaces generosity, responsibility is abandoned, appreciation disappears, differences become hierarchy, and jealousy becomes control, feelings don't stand a chance. Feelings don't die from lack of passion, they die from lack of respect. And no amount of romance can resurrect what contempt, entitlement, and emotional warfare have killed.